place. And so learning the fine points of fall protection rescue and having a sound fall protection plan is certainly a must. And what we see is that throughout the industry, and this does not pertain to everyone, but it is consistent that fall protection plans are minimal in many situations and may have not been conveyed to the folks that are actually on site, or possibly even discussed on means and methods, how we do what we do, when we're going to do it. And so we're really wanted to emphasize this, especially with the Unified Fall Protection Standard, the 880, that is relatively new, and making sure everybody has their plans dialed in and knows what to do when the worst situation occurs. And so with that being said, I'd like to reintroduce Tim, and he is the FallTech head trainer. And he's assisted by the FallTech team. You've already heard from some of those folks, Gene, Billy, Joshua, and Michael. We thank you all very much. Tim, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to you so you can share your screen. Thank you so much for your time today.
And thank you, Rhett. I really appreciate you having me here. I appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate everybody being on this call. Hopefully everybody sees my screen bright and spotlighted. So I have it spotlighted. Okay, Rhett, looks like you're still sharing your screen. There we go.
Looks good.
Okay, everyone. Okay, cool. We're all spotlighted. Awesome. So my name is Tim Shank. As everyone heard earlier, I'm the Vice President of Training for FallTech for our training department. So it's kind of a new wing of FallTech. And it's just recognized that FallTech really needed a training division. Obviously, it's a huge part of fall protection. And, you know, it's a huge part of our industry. I've been in the industry a very long time. So I started, you know, in the late 90s as a professional firefighter. And I was a professional firefighter for nearly 20 years. I was on an urban search and rescue team. So I've really got to use a lot of this equipment as it's evolved over time. And yeah, I've seen the consequences of having plans and not having plans. And if you think accidents don't happen, oh, they happen. They happen every single day. As we're talking, somebody probably just fell. Somebody probably just passed out in a confined space. A trench probably just sloughed in, right? It's on and on and on. How do we stop this madness? We stop this madness by planning and having diligence about the work we're doing. Thinking that the local government agency, fire department, sheriff department, whoever's going to get you out of a jam is really just kind of haphazard. You know, they're there for emergency response. They're not there for our work planning. And we're there doing professional work. It's up to us as safety professionals to look at the entire situation and say, hey, I've got somebody working at height. I've got someone in a trench or a confined space. I got to cover all the X's and O's in case something goes bad. Plan on something going bad. If you plan on it going bad, you won't have a problem. It's the people that do no planning. So I want to show you a quick slide. 2020 was kind of a rough year. I think everybody would agree with that one. This got sent to me January, like early January of 2021. And in December of 2020, I can't tell you where this is at. This is at a kind of a sensitive site, but those of you kind of been around the industry can tell what this is. So this is a big dome, big concrete dome at an industrial facility on the ocean. And what they're doing is they're actually decommissioning this. So you can see there's like this elevator here, and there's this huge MEWP. So what had happened was there was a guy, safety professional, came and took my course. And he said, hey, you know, I don't need to do rescue planning. We have an on-site fire department. I don't need to worry about it. And I said, well, look, they might not have the correct capability or even understand what work you're doing. Well, he took that to heart. So he rented this MEWP just for standby for rescue. And why? Well, because he had people that were working in this elevator. Wouldn't you know it, Murphy came to work that day. He was riding the elevator. So it got stuck at the very top point. There's no other alternative exit. And had they not had this MEWP on standby, it would have been a real problem. There's no fire department, anything that's going to come and get you here. This is a helicopter. So that would have been the Coast Guard. And that's where we were at. But because there was forethought, there was planning, and this guy had to justify that. He had to justify his planning because this was an expensive piece to have on site to do nothing, just as a what if. But it came into play and it saved 4 people's lives. And you could say, well, they weren't, hanging off the side. Yeah, but they were trapped. And think about exposure. You're on the ocean, it gets cold, hypothermia, and if you're there for a long time, it really could be a big problem. So this was one of those things that really made me proud of what we can accomplish by training and simple planning. That's all it is. So, why? Well, the law tells us why. But, that's one piece, and I'll get into what that says. But I think a bigger piece is if I'm going into some place that's dangerous, I want to make sure I'm coming back out. And certainly if I'm sending other people into this place, it's my diligence that they come home. And guess what? The law agrees with me. So this is both, OSHA 1910 and 1926. So industry and construction. You could go into EM 385. It's in there as well. ANSI as well. Literally every standards body says you shall provide prompt rescue. And check it out. It says the employer must provide prompt rescue. Okay, it does not say, again, local government agency. This is up to us as the employer, but it's simple. All it comes down to is a simple formula for a plan, and I'm going to get into that. So ANSI tells us that prior to any work starting, a competent person must do a fall rescue plan. This is as part of your managed comprehensive program. So ANSI's E359.2 talks about planning, and it wants you to do a fall rescue plan anytime someone's in fall arrest gear, which makes sense. Because if you're in fall arrest gear, we know as safety professionals, the consequence of that is falling. So that means that there's going to be somebody suspended. Now, there's all kinds of, we could get into, well, how long can you last and all these things. It's so subjective. Because if you fall and you smash your head really hard, your clock is ticking really quick. Or maybe you're really healthy, and you didn't really have a fall and you're just kind of stranded. Well, you probably got more time. So, time is kind of one of those things everyone wants to put a number on. I'm going to tell you it needs to be expeditious. And how do you do that? You do that through planning. If you don't plan, you will have some type of a tragedy. So also, ANSI tells us we have to identify the nearest safe working level when we're doing our planning. Makes sense, right? We have to get them down to a place where we can actually extricate them. The methods used to extricate or transport the victim. We want to plan the victim all the way to the hospital, not just off the structure. Too many times when I'm teaching rescue classes, I'll set up an evolution and people do the one little pitch of the evolution and they're all high-fiving. And then I'm like, well, hey, how are you going to get them down the rest of the way and out the door? Because that's the reality of it. And if we don't do it, somebody has to do it. And it's all about time. We need to get them to the hospital. That's what we're trying to do. Also, ANSI tells us that rescuers must be trained by a competent rescue trainer. So this is a competent person trainer that's an expert in rescue through knowledge, training, and experience, and has the ability to train others. And you have to have a higher level of education than the people you're training. And this is all in ANSI. So I want to teach you something about the rescue monster. Most people in safety probably haven't heard of this, but most people in EMS and the fire service have. And that's because the rescue monster has taken more rescuers than anything. So let me explain what this is. It's the best and the worst inside of all of us. And what happens is under stress, we forget about who we are. We forget that we're flesh and blood, and that if we leverage our lives and something happens, we can lose them. And think confined space. How many tragedies have you heard where there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then finally someone's got to go, hey, no more. Right? That's the rescue monster. And you just start chasing it like lemmings, and that's because it's inherent in all of us. How do we stop this from happening? Well, we have to be able to be informed and prepared, not reactive. How do we do that? We do that with planning and training. Yeah, and the problem is, as soon as you have one rescue and then your rescuer goes down, you don't have two rescues, but it's really kind of synergistic. So really, it's not like you have two rescues, it almost turns into three. It turns into this big problem. And so what we want to do is we want to stop that right away. We don't want to get anybody else hurt. And so if we're not trained to do something or we don't have a plan, we want to make sure we don't leverage somebody else. When I look at a lot of rescue pictures, and again, I've been doing this a very long time. When I look at a lot of them, first thing I'm looking at is how are the rescuers protected? Next time you see a confined space rescue in the newspaper or TV or something, take a look. Are there people dancing around the unprotected side or edge, which is the confined space, the hole, all the time? Well, wait a minute. I thought by law we have to be fall protected near that side, and we do. And it doesn't matter that there's a rescue happening. So what we have to do is, again, we have to focus on our protection first, and then we fix the problem. Remember, the person got themselves in that problem. We don't want to let this thing take effect. So when we talk about rescue planning, ANSI tells me it needs to be some kind of a document. I'm going to go back a couple slides, though. Interesting enough, the law, it says nothing about planning, which honestly, and this is obviously federal OSHA. I know we're all in different states. I'm in California, which goes a little more off of ANSI, so it's a little different. But federal doesn't say anything about planning, which drives me crazy. Because what's the old adage? Fail to plan, plan to fail. So ANSI tells us we need to. And what we're doing is we're trying to find the easiest, safest method of access and patient extrication. And what we want to do is have the competent person, right? And the competent person, why a competent person? Because they are capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards. Where does the rescue come into play? Rescue has its own predictable hazards. I've been doing it long enough, I could see things before they're going to happen. Just like many of you on the construction site or on the industrial site. And it's the same effect, right? And that's why competency, it's kind of hard to say, well, yeah, you're competent in 16 hours. Like you might be certified, but it takes a minute to get up to speed on that. So the competent person is going to evaluate what equipment we need to access the patient, and then for our team safety. And then we're going to keep that cache of equipment located near the operation. It does no good inside the superintendent's truck, inside the office. Like if we're working on the fourth floor, it needs to be on the fourth floor. The plan needs to be on the fourth floor, and everyone needs to be briefed in our JHA. So we want, again, the overall goal of this planning is to basically delegate responsibilities to achieve this goal. I recommend always having 3 plans, a plan in A, B, and C. Plan A won't work. Plan B might work. Plan C, it better work. But if you only have one, what ends up happening is a lot of scrambling because there's always some adaptation. There's always some kind of thing or hazard or caveat you didn't see coming. So when we create a plan, I'm really looking at 3 major focuses. So first off is like hazard exposure. Where's the fall? Where's the fall arrest being used? Consider fall. Like, again, where is the fall going to happen? Do we have an access problem? Is there a confined space or a trench? Like, what's the hazard? Is it electrical hazard? Right? So the plan has to match whatever that work is. The rescue methods, they need to be as simple as possible. The more simple of a method you have, the more actual it will work. We want to get the person to the next safest level. And then again, this could be a multi-stage thing. It's usually not a single deal. It's usually a multi-stage thing. The rescuers, how many do we need and who are they? They're going to have to be trained and they're going to have to be delineated ahead of time, or the rescue monster takes effect. Because somebody goes down and all of a sudden you're going to hear a whole bunch of yelling and a whole bunch of people gathered around. How do you break that? Leadership and roles. If we know we have a leader and we've all got roles, I'm going to go grab my role and do my piece, because if we all do our piece, the problem goes away. Again, this sinks into training. We have to be able to talk. So our communication method is huge. Again, I always recommend two forms on this as well. Could be face-to-face, could be radio, whatever it is, you want two forms. And then the PPE for rescuer hazard exposure. I can't understate that enough. Too many times rescuers are putting themselves in peril. For communications, always have this communication plan. And the team and the victim always need to be able to communicate. That's huge. If you're a victim, even if I can't get to you, if I can talk to you, that's a big deal. That makes you feel like, okay, there's hope. I'm going to hang on. I'm going to survive. This is a big deal for the human that's in peril. Also, you know what? We need the intelligence to be able to get the job done. Always try to have a primary rescue channel and have it preset. Two forms like I talked about, and some different forms of communication. Whistle blasts, those work on the job site. It's job sites are loud. Face to face sometimes doesn't work. Going to a steel mill, we could be looking at each other and you can't hear. Radios, that a lot of times those don't work in confined spaces. A lot of times the cell tower, if you're working on a tower, they don't like those. The communications get all mixed up. So you have to understand where you're at and where you're working. Maybe you're in an IDLH environment. Now you need a hardwired, intrinsically safe communication, right? It kind of goes on and on and on. For equipment, always equipment is a big one. People ask me, oh, what equipment do I need? Boy, I'm looking at a whole room of equipment in here. But when I go to the job to do a rescue or rescue training, or I'm doing planning or standby, I basically bring what I need and nothing else, right? So I try to be as clean and cool as possible so that there's not a bunch of clutter. So just what I need and nothing more. Big one, we always miss the mark here. A lot of times we think, oh, fall protection, fall rescue or confined space rescue. Big one to have, don't forget your first aid CPR AED. Have it on standby with that equipment. Most likely, if they went down for a reason. And I'm just going to state that bleeding control is your one opportunity to truly save somebody's life. You only have so much in you. And the times where I've seen civilians help other people maintain their life, it was through bleeding control, holding direct pressure, tourniquets, things like that, quick clot. All those are big deal, right? Stop the bleeding. Someone's up on a structure and they're bleeding. We might have to stop the bleeding before we get them down because they might bleed out before. And these are all real things. So it's important, again, to have the first aid training, have the equipment there, and use your common sense. Always have a primary and a backup rescue system. So if I'm going to go rescue somebody with a rescue system like the Unidrive, or a rope system that I build, I'm going to have a backup as well. What if I go down? What if my kit breaks? I need to be able to have some redundancy here. What if I have another rescue in another spot? It creates capability, but it also is a good insurance policy. I said that I heard someone was from the insurance agency, so I said that for you. Mechanical equipment needs to be staged and used for rescue only. I talked about that earlier about the San Onofre, about that incident at that power plant. Rescue kits should have all components and they need to be complete. So, edge rollers, carabiners, anchor slings. If I grab a rescue kit and I have no way to anchor it, that doesn't help me. If I have no way to bend the rope over an edge or to change direction with a pulley, it doesn't help me. Right. So I need to have all those complete components, and make sure you got enough rope length. Suspension trauma straps, people talk about these as a rescue plan. And I want to state that a suspension trauma straps are not a rescue plan. That's just going to buy you time for the rescue to be initiated. Now, in any government work, EM 385 requires them. And I'll be honest, I won't go in a harness without them. And it's not because I'm working for a manufacturer. I've always worked for manufacturers. But even when, I was in the fire service, I was all about like, hey, what's the safest thing so I go home? And we all should be thinking like that. But this isn't like, oh, I bought some trauma straps and we got our plan. This just gets some time. So what you want to do is you want to deploy those, and you want to keep them keep them on until the rescue is initiated and the victim is at the bottom, right? So even when they're being rescued, they're still suspended. So what we want to do is keep them in those straps, have them bend their knee at the bottom. Again, suspension trauma is a real thing. And really what's happening is we have half of our blood in our bodies trapped in our legs. And now our core has to compensate with half the volume and all the compensatory mechanisms that come along with that, like a kicked up heart rate, a kicked up blood pressure for a little bit, right? Like the tension increases until we unfortunately decompensate. Once we decompensate, the heart rate starts going down, the BP starts going down, right? That vessel tone starts decreasing. That's when we start flattening out. That's what we're trying to prevent with this. These trauma straps, what happens is it unloads your leg straps and allows that circulation to happen. You're still standing though. You still only have so much time. That's why rescue is important. So I want to show you a quick little rescue device. This is the Unidrive in action, and this is actually setting up for a tower rescue. But just to show you, I think we're about 30 or 40 feet up a tower or something on this. And really, this was resetting for the rescue evolutions. This is out in Alaska. But you could see how well this thing hauls with a drill. Everybody's got a drill on the job site. And it's really got some good horsepower. So the mechanical advantage is incredible. It's a 9-to-1 gear ratio, but the mechanical advantage is much, much higher. I can use a drill. I can use the little hand wheel. It's got different size rope lengths. And this is a gear assisted rescue device. And you can haul with it or you can descend with it. So it's got an automatic descent feature. So for like platform evacuation, if you had to bail off of a wind turbine or a tower or something, or out of a MEWP, right, it has that ability. But remember, a lot of times you got to go up. So what we want to do is we want to haul the victim up enough to disconnect their snap hook. We disconnect their snap hook, and then we can simply lower them to the ground. But it's not always that simple because a lot of times there's hazards in the way. So we might have to use a tagline to get them away. I recommend you come and you take our rescue course. We'll come and work with you on site with your specific hazards. We'll teach you how to use these tools, and we'll individually train each one of your personnel to become rescuers. And this is the only way to do it. If somebody is doing a rescue training and it's just a theory class, for one, it's not legal. For two, no one will actually be able to do the rescue. You would have had to have gone out and done it before to create that muscle memory. That's what it's all about. We know that as stress increases, your IQ goes down, and we always revert to training. So that's why we got to get that in there and interlocked. So for personnel, again, they need to be competent rescuer trained, have the proper PPE, and then I just want to restate, protect falls, edges, and sides as required by law and gravity. Make sure that they are all briefed and understand their role. Safe access for the rescuers is a big one. Again, what happens is the rescue monster will take place if we don't have safe access. So maybe ahead of time, I need to figure out my access before the problem happens. And that's what I recommend. So again, that's where we start with safe access for the rescuer and then getting the victim down. Okay, so some rescue methods. And I got kind of three, categories here. So the first method I would call self-rescue. Kind of self-explanatory, climb up, climb out, you're gonna help yourself. Most people do this out of fear or embarrassment, one or the other, but they're usually gonna do it if they can. The next would be like a descent device. So descent devices are good. A lot of tower climbers use those. A lot of people working in MEWPs, bucket trucks, things like that. They've got descent devices. Thing stalls out, they got a way down. Self-rescue ladders, those are okay. I wouldn't bet the farm on them. They only work if you really have the ability to anchor it above you and you have a like wall that you're up against. If you're in air, what happens when you get on a rope ladder? Your feet try to go above your head. So that's something that it's good, but I would practice it and see if it'll actually work. The next is like mechanical rescue, and I would say that would be like an MEWP, and that's a great tool. But again, it's got to be staged, got to be rated, and remember, bring some Fall Pro for the person who just fell because theirs is probably blown out now. Ladders, extension ladders, A-frame ladders, rescue ladders, whatever kind of ladder you can come up with. If you can get it to them, that's a great way to go. Even if they're unconscious, if I put an extension ladder under you and you're unconscious, well, now you're not suspended. Now you just have an access problem. That's much, much better. Remember, suspension, life or limb. So access problem, now I'm thinking more exposure to elements. And a crane. A crane is another good mechanical method. I see this used a lot, especially with the iron workers and things of that nature, and just people who are around cranes. Um, Intervention rescue. So this is actually our team having to, or our workers actually having to rescue, our fallen person. And the first one I would call is an indirect connection. So an intervention rescue and an indirect connection. That would be using like a pole connector, a pole to hook them over the side. That can be dangerous too. Now you have a second worker hanging over the side with a pole. We're hoping they don't fall. And then you got a direct connection. That's actually physically connecting to their D-ring with my hands. So that means I have to either climb up to them or come down or rappel down to them to connect. So, that one, a little bit dicier. And then you have a pickoff. This is for somebody who has a major access problem, like they're halfway down the body of a wind turbine. They're halfway down a smooth-faced dam. They fell on a horizontal lifeline in the middle of free air. There's really no way to get them. That's when somebody that's highly trained has to slide down a rope, hook to the victim, get them off their system, and now we got two people on one line. Right? We'll be backed up in that case, but still, we got two people on one system. So very dangerous. Shouldn't happen that often, but there's industries it happens. So here's a video of a bucket truck descent, and this is up in Alaska as well. And a lot of the places in Alaska, they might have only one bucket truck. So if if it goes down, there's nobody else to come get you. There you are. So we go and practice this with them all the time. They're using a manual descent device, and you could see it's a fun one to get out of that thing. But unfortunately, there's only one way to do it. And we go nice and easy, and you load into this manual descent device, right? You go nice and easy down the ladder until you're loaded in the descender. And then you get away from the ladder and you slide down the rope nice and easy. And there's lots of instances of these things, catching fire or just stalling out and being stuck. In fact, this particular company, been going up there 4 years in a row now. They've already had 3 incidences where they've had to do this. One of the bucket trucks, the boom broke and was sliding back and forth. Another one, it stalled out and got stuck. And then another one was actually another company's employee. And they had to kind of help them talk them through this without training. And that was the only way to get the guy down. So very, very important. Now down south, do I do a ton of this? No, but we should, because you really should have a way out of these. But down south, we're not doing it as much because there's so many bucket trucks and we're so fed into and bought into, oh, 911 will come get me. 911. Not really fair to all of them. Just, hey, we're going to dump everything on them and they don't even know anything about it. This is dangerous stuff, right? It requires planning. And here's an indirect connection. So this is on a railroad bridge. It's going to use a pole to connect into the victim's D-ring. And you can see they're tied off. And if anyone's ever been around, rail before, they're using these things called rail dogs. They're like a sliding rail anchor, and so that's their fall protection anchor. And then the obviously energy absorbing lanyard, and it is actually short enough where they cannot go over that edge, which means they're in restraint. And that's what we want. We want them in fall restraint, and they're in fall restraint on this side, obviously, not the other. We want them in fall restraint anytime they're making any type of indirect connections or direct. Otherwise, we could have one of them spill over the edge. So, and as you could see, like he missed the first one, and it takes a second. This isn't something that happens really fast. And nor do I want it to happen really fast. I don't want anyone making mistakes in this type of realm. It's too for real. The idea is that we have it initiated. That's the idea. You want speed? Practice. That's how we get speed. So, and you'll see he'll finally get it here. There we go. You can see it's really not that easy, and it's a little bit dicey. But they got him. And now they just got to haul him up with the unit drive, disconnect the guy's lanyard, go over the side. Here's a direct connection. They're utilizing actually a MEWP to make some connections. So you can't really see it, but he had made connections through this ladder cage to a fallen worker so that they could rescue him, because there's no way to bypass in that cage. So here's a way where we used a mechanical piece of equipment, and we used our rope system as well. And then this is a pickoff. So, pickoffs, I've done pickoffs in the past. Actually, this is me many years ago, actually, but that's me. And, pickoffs are something that do happen, but in work, if I'm to the point I'm planning a pickoff, like we need to do something. Something's not right. We're leveraging our people way too much. And I'm not saying rope access is leveraging our people. I'm just saying a pickoff. Okay, I wanted to show you one of my plans. So this is what one of my plans looks like. I make it very simple. It's got the notifications at the top. Basically, what you're going to do if we have a rescue. This is the sequence. Primary radio channel. You're going to call Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We have a fallen worker at this location. Team assembles. The equipment, including first aid, is gathered. The rescue spotter guides in the team, right? So you see, we kind of got a little direction there, even though they've been trained. Why? Because they're going to be stressed out. So why is this not a book? Because they're going to be stressed out. They don't want to read a book. And as a professional rescuer, if you hand me a book, I'm going to hand it back. I don't want that. I want intel to rescue the person. That's what I'm looking for. And you could say I got plan A, self-rescue. Plan B is like a combination type rescue. And then plan C is like a pickoff, right? You see, we kind of just escalated. And then I'll also go another step. And I will, there's an awesome software out there. It's called V-Rigger. And you have to get a license for it. It's like $500, but it's awesome. And that's how you can make this cool planning. So you can see, like, this is a horizontal lifeline. Somebody fell on it. Here's how we're going to rescue them. And what it does is it gives the trained worker, hey, I got a little bit of direction. I got a visual. I can make it happen. And that's what we're trying to do. We don't want to create shock and awe. We're not trying to create a science experiment. This isn't some thesis, right? This is an actual piece of document that's going to save somebody's life. And we need to look at it like, what are the easiest steps, easiest ways to do this? So that, in a nutshell, is rescue planning. As you can see, there is quite a bit to it. Please come and take one of our courses. We're starting this training department. I'm going to be doing most of the rescue training. I have a whole cadre of people, and I have professional rescuers on our staff. Most training companies cannot say that. Our people have been there. We're going to take the time to ensure that your entire crew is well trained to be able to effect these rescues. So with that, folks, thank you all for your time. This is all I got. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it back to Rhett, if he's listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. That would be great. What questions? And feel free to unmute your microphones and chime in. I'm just looking through the chat room here. I don't see any questions that popped up. This was fantastic information, and I know that you all have a tremendous amount of equipment and also can provide assistance to folks who are looking for those technical type situations that they may not have any information or know how to do. I know I've leaned on your team over the years to assist in various scenarios where we've needed special equipment or just any general equipment at all. But let's see here. Matthew says, is there a list of your training courses? Also,
Awesome.
Angela says, yes, please.
Oops, sorry, Rhett. Yeah, great question. Thank you, Matthew. So I don't have a list quite yet because we are revamping and I got to figure out exactly what direction we want to do. But we will have competent rescuer. So we will have a fall rescue course. So it'll be 2 days long. I can for 100% certain say that. And I have a confined space rescue course. I have both of those today. So, but going forward, we're going to have a whole series for basically industry specific stuff. Like you saw the railroad and the bucket truck. And, so we're going to have one for each. If there's something that you need custom, please contact me or reach out to Joshua and we'll build something custom for you too.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. Next question is, does your training team have bilingual personnel?
Great question. So I do have a one bilingual trainer who speaks Spanish and English. So if that's the bilingual you're looking for, we're good. I don't have anybody in other language though. I apologize.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Bob Scarborough posted FallTech.com /training. Thank you, Bob, for that as well. Other folks saying thank you very much for the presentation. Does anybody, and feel free, folks, if you want to just unmute your microphone and ask questions, that is also okay too, or explain a particular situation. I see a couple hands went up. Let's see here. Brandon, please, hand up. We'd love to hear from you, sir.
Yeah, so if we have a unique building or a unique situation, do you guys do consulting too as far as helping come up with a good rescue plan? For instance, we're doing the Space Needle elevator modernization and it's a unique building. So I was just curious if you guys help out with that.
Yeah, actually that's awesome. I love this stuff. I'm probably like a nerd. People might call me that. So to me, that actually sounds very cool and interesting. 100% we do consulting and custom rescue planning. So like that would be something where we would get together and I'd have to come out and visit and we would do a consultation and come up with a plan for you. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent question. Any other questions? Is there any other information, maybe as people are trying to drum up other questions, in case you don't, is there any open discussion that you all would like to have with regards to site-specific fall protection plans and kind of explore that a little bit more in detail as it pertains here to this state per Washington Administrative Code? We have a plethora of safety professionals here, and while we all understand what the requirements are, perhaps this would be a good opportunity for us to all have a roundtable and talk about it or explain particular situations or enforcement that has been taking place by the Department of Labor and Industries with not having those plans or effective plans in place. So just trying to stir the pot a little bit, folks. Let me know if that's Steve, please. Thank you.
I have more of a comment right now, and maybe you can back it up and agree or tell me I'm wrong. But one of the things as I've gotten longer into my career, I don't care whether it's trench, fall, confined space. I don't care if it's just a tight quarters area. I am emphasizing how you're going to get your buddy out of an environment. An example the other day was, it's been a few weeks back, but company putting up a foundation for a very tall elevator. So the rebar was very large, very big, very spread out. And guess what? Somebody forgot to run a pipe underneath. So I see this guy out in the middle of this rebar that's probably 8 foot deep, 20 by 20, and he's on his back trying to skinny under there to put a pipe underneath. And I ask his partner standing there, how are you going to rescue that guy? And he goes, well, is it a requirement? Is it really a requirement? Is that something? And I go, okay, let's rephrase that. What if it's you out there? How are they going to get you out of there? You know, and so I don't care what the environment is. I'm always looking now a little bit more in depth that we need to just be thinking about, you know, what if somebody tripped and falls and they're whatever the location is, what are we going to do for them? And I also think that as we start making these fall rescue plans or confined space rescue plans, and you say, no, this is going to be a real action, not a just a fill in the blank, you know, pencil whip that thing, that pretty soon people start figuring out, you know, maybe I don't have to do that activity. I can do the activity in a different way and eliminate the rescue.
Steve, you're my best friend. You're nailing it. Yeah, that's awesome. I 100% agree with everything you said. And I think, you know, I would argue that that probably was a confined space, right? Right. Did it meet the definition of the three? Not designed for continuous human occupancy, limited entry egress, large enough to bodily enter, could perform work. I think it met that. Was there a hazard, right? A hazard would require a permit. Well, me personally, I think so, but you know, that one might be debatable. So you could see, like, legally, you could almost, you know, definitely go, hey, you need to do something. But you know, reality is human beings, flesh and blood, and we really have to watch out for one another. There's no one else doing it. And you know, too many people are just relying on others. And yeah, we need to watch. Hey, like if I'm the superintendent, I need to care about my crew like they're my family. And you know, if I've got a partner at work, I know that that partner has a family, and I need to make sure that they go home. There's too many people that you know, disregard that. So yeah, Steve, I'm with you 100%.
The second thing on that is I have helped companies, and I like your expression, keep it simple. Because if you know, a lot of people all of a sudden think, well, I have to have people with ropes and helmets and, you know, and no, in a lot of cases, it is a very simple program, but have a program. And so you put it together for the different people, and day one, everybody gets excited. They grab their bag, they take it to the roof with them, and they do this. And after about 3 days of taking it to the roof, they go, well, we'll just leave it at the bottom of the ladder. Then it's left in the truck, and then the truck is moved from the job site to 6 blocks away from the job site. And so within a month, they've gone from this is a smart idea to back to non-existent. Watch out for those traps, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think that's human nature, right? If it doesn't happen, you don't see the value. But if, you know, if we bring it to real and we create a culture of this is how we operate, and it's part of our, you know, our JHA in the morning or our AHA or whatever anyone's doing, our planning session, you know, we incorporate that and we get the buy-in. And the first time you actually have a save, everybody's sold. Now you don't even have to worry about the culture. It takes care of itself, because now everyone's like, hey, you know, Bill got saved. And if we weren't here doing that and we didn't train and we didn't have the gear, we don't know. So that's where I see a lot of buy-in. But yeah, it takes a minute, right? This is a new thing to a lot of people, but it's common sense too.
Excellent points to bring up, Steve. And I have something to add in, you know, on kind of the same note, but a little bit different, is that it's really important to make sure that with those site-specific fall protection plans, that we are identifying means and methods to extract somebody from those difficult situations as discussed, and not rely on 911 or the fire department with your local area. And depending on where you're at, whether you're on the west side or the east side, response time might be greatly increased depending on logistics, site layout, or just response time and topography of where you're working. And so having a rescue plan in place that is going to be effective in practice versus just keeping 911 on the list. I see far too many people doing that, and yet it's never discussed on how do we get somebody down, and do we have a ladder that can be utilized in that location, or can we access with a scissor lift or aerial lift or a particular rescue descent device like we've been shown by FallTech, or anything else out there on the market that may be beneficial, and have we trained folks on how to use those items? And so there are a tremendous amount of precarious situations that folks can be in. One thing that I have been emphasizing a tremendous amount in my fall protection certification courses that I provide is that rescue ladders can also become a very important tool in your bag of rescue equipment. And these vertical descending rescue ladders can reach extensive lengths and can be anchored up top and drop down an elevator shaft, or dropped inside of a tank or a tunnel or a vessel, or whatever you need to at least give somebody who might be conscious something to hold on to support themselves while concerted rescue efforts are taking place. Or just be deployed in a location like Brandon mentioned on the Space Needle. How do we get to these people? Well, these are some of the items that we want to be looking at. And I got to be quite frank that if we're working on any high-rise buildings or multiple level buildings that don't have access by lifts at all times to rescue a suspended person, whether they're conscious or unconscious, that you ought to probably have a couple rescue ladders that are adequate enough reach, which are not that expensive and will not be utilized unless absolutely needed, to access or spider web, if you will, for lack of better terms, to hook somebody and try to pull them back into an upper level or deck where rescue team members can readily assist them. So just explore your options, take a look at what's out there, contact your local suppliers like FallTech and beyond, who will be able to point you in the right direction of some of these useful devices that go beyond just rescue ladders, but various other types of equipment. So anybody have any input on that, feel free. Just my 2 cents.